It's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter for this webinar, Dayna Conradt. She's a manager in our Clintonville office and QuickBooks ProAdvisor for desktop and online. She's got more than 20 years of experience in payroll and QuickBooks, and she has a few more QuickBooks trainings coming up in May to look forward to. Today, she'll be going through how to set up self-care, other care, and extended care pay in QuickBooks as a way to keep track of payroll in the midst of COVID-19. So I'll now pass the torch over to Dayna, and she'll kick off today's presentation for us.
Thanks, Autumn. Thanks, everybody, for attending. We just thought we would show a little bit of setup of the QuickBooks. With all this new COVID-19 paid sick leave, it gets a little confusing. And it's great to utilize the QuickBooks payroll items the way they're meant to be used to help you track this. Just a brief little overview. There's 3 of them you need to be worried about tracking. The first one is called that's kind of like the self-care. So if an employee were to have to be required to stay home and quarantine themselves, they're eligible for full pay for 80 hours. So it allows them to stay home and quarantine themselves for 2 weeks without getting, other employees sick at work. Just a precaution that employers can take. Then along with that one, there's another one, it's care for others. That one allows you to pay your employee 2/3 of their pay. It also is eligible for 80 hours. But the key is the self-care and the other care combined are the 80 hours. You don't get 80 hours for self-care and then go to another 80 hours for care for others. It's 80 hours for the 2 of them. And if you ever have questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to us and we can help explain that a little more to you. So the other care, what is it related to? Well, it allows a person, in case some family member was required to quarantine, they should also quarantine. So it allows them to stay home for the 2 weeks also. It also can be used because the schools are closed or daycare is closed. So it allows the parent to stay home with their child and get paid for 80 hours. Once those 80 hours are used up, then they can move on to the extended child care. So if the children obviously are still going to be home because the schools are still closed and they've used up their first 80 hours, they can now move on to the 400 hours. So it's extended care, still at the 2/3 pay for 400 hours. So today I just want to show you how to set up these items to help track it so that you don't have to try to remember and put charts outside of here. How many hours did they use? What were they using? What should I be using? And you can feel free to ask questions as I go along, because the point of this is to show you how to set these items up in QuickBooks correctly so that your system works. And you can always call me afterwards, call anybody at KerberRose, a team member. They'll get you to the right person to help set these up. So one of the first suggestions is when you go to the chart of accounts, to set up a new chart of accounts kind of for the tracking of this credit. So a good idea is to go to List, Chart of Accounts, and down here at the bottom, we're going to click on the word account and we're going to say New. We're going to create a specific COVID-19 expense account. So what we're going to do is, it's not one of these that are listed here. We're going to drop this little down arrow and we're going to see Other Expense. So we're going to kind of put this expense in its own little category so that it's easy to find on our P&L. And then we'll hit Continue. And then we're just going to name it. We kind of like to just keep these things just COVID-19 expense. Keep it real generic, real easy. You can fill in the account numbers. If you use account numbers, you don't have to. And then you can leave the rest of this blank. And then we're just going to say Save and Close. So now we've got an expense account set up for the COVID-19. Now let's go ahead and do the payroll one. So if we go to List, and you'll see Payroll Item List. This will be a listing of all your payroll items that you use. So if we go ahead and click on Account New, we're going to do a custom setup. And normally we go through the wages. This time we're going to go through addition. We're going to hit Next. And then, what do you name it? QuickBooks uses the name, the National Paid Leave Employee. So that's kind of referencing that it's the self-care I seem to be using self-care. You can use the word employee. You can use whatever it takes for you to get through the system. The expense account. So if you can guess that, yep, we're going to use the one we just set up, the COVID-19. Now you can type in the word or you can drop the down arrow to find it in the list. And then we'll just hit next. The compensation screen, if we go ahead and drop this down, you're going to see there's 3 new ones in here. One is for the National Paid Leave Family, the FMLA, and the employee. So you just want to link the correct code to the one, how you named it. So this particular thing, we named it the National Paid Leave Employee, so that's the one I'm going to pick. Then you can hit next. QuickBooks knows that the employer is not subject to paying Social Security company on this. So you can see that it's not checked, and that is correct. So the tricky part with the QuickBooks is they're not all set up for this, and most softwares are not all ready for this, but it's also not subject to Medicare, but you can't uncheck it in QuickBooks. You'll have to work with your accountant dealing with the Medicare company so that we can explain it to you one-on-one versus in this seminar, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. So the company, when they pay these wages out, are not subject to the Medicare or the Social Security. And we hit next. How do you want this to calculate? We would want it to calculate on hours because we're going to put in the amount of hours in there times a rate. We always want to pick the hours. In here, there is a limit on the amount that can be paid out. So there's a maximum hourly rate. So the self-care has a max amount of $63.87 per hour, or it has a limit of $5,110. So we can just go ahead and put in the total gross there. And then you can tell it to restart each year, or you can say it's a one-time limit. So this is a one-time limit. This is a one-time thing. So we've got the first one set up. We can go ahead and hit finish. Now we can hit account and we can do another one. So once again, we'll do the custom setup. Next. And remember, it's an addition. So we hit next. This is the field where we can name it. Where last time we had the employee one. Now we can do the family one. And we hit next. And then here's our expense account. This is where we're going to pick the COVID-19 expense. Next. Drop the down arrow, look for our national pays, and look for the family one. And we hit next, and we click the based on the hours. This one also has a limit. This one limits out at $2,000. And we can tell it it's a one-time limit. And we can hit finish. And then there is obviously one more that we can do. Another new one, custom setup, another addition, next. And then this one will be called the FMLA. So it's the National Paid Leave FMLA. And we hit next. And we look for the COVID expense. And then we drop the down arrow and we get the FMLA, National Paid Leave. You hit next. It knows the taxes based on the hours. This one maxes out at the 400 hours. So I think it's just mainly we have to watch the hours. I mean, you could put in the $10,000 here. I don't know if anybody would ever use that much of it, but definitely you can do it. And put the one-time limit. Okay, so now we have our 3 codes set up. We need to also set them up for our employee. So our employee is John Adams. So we're going to go double-click him, end up in his employee information. We'll click on the Payroll Info tab. And over here on the right is where you do the additions, deductions, and company. So the very first item here we'll pick if this employee were to use it. So you'd only want to do this if the employee is eligible to use it. So the first one, let's just say we're allowing him to self-quarantine at home. So we're just going to go ahead, put in his item name, the amount, so we know that he gets paid $10 per hour because we can see that over here. So we just want to set him up as $10 an hour. The limit comes in automatically because we set that up. Or if we had to pick him because he's taking care of his children at home, then we go ahead, put the national paid leave in there. And then we're going to have to put in his, well, obviously he wouldn't make very much if we did 2/3 of $10, but you would put the 2/3 in there of the $10 to make this one work out. Same with if you had to pick the FMLA. So that would be setting him up for the employee. So he's ready in there, good to go. The only tricky part is with QuickBooks, is what I feel, when you add things in this addition column, it doesn't allow the payroll summary to bring through the hours. And I feel that people are going to want to see the total hours that people have used for these two pay codes. So I kind of feel you also need to create an earnings item over here to track the hours. So over here, we would just track the hours. We wouldn't track anything to do with the pay because we can't manipulate the taxes in QuickBooks. So if I wanted to create another national paid leave for the self-care for the employee, I could just go ahead and type that in here, name it something I wanted to do. QuickBooks is going to say, it's not in my list. Do you want to set it up? And I do. I would like to set it up. I would like it to be hourly wage, a regular pay. This is just the name that I picked for it. You can pick whatever name you want, whatever you want it to name. You can allow it to go to the COVID expense account. And I'll show you in just a minute what I exactly mean by doing this particular setup, because it might be a little confusing to you until you actually see it in action. But if I go ahead to run a payroll, all right, we're going to pay John. And I'm going to pay him his 80 hours. So we can see I'm paying him the 80 hours showing up here. It's taxing it like it's supposed to. And over here, it is not taxing the Social Security for the company. It is not supposed to either be doing the Medicare also. So at this time, I can override it to shut it off. The government has allowed the employer to not have to pay the Social Security or the Medicare on it. So it allows the employer to save on taxes for this. All right, so I'm not going to fill this in, or I will fill it in so you guys can see it on the payroll summary. I'm going to create the check. And I'm going to go run a payroll summary. So you can see I paid him this national paid leave employee, and it's only showing his gross. It's not tracking the hours there. That is why I felt it would be a little easier to fill in this pay code with the hours. It doesn't have a dollar amount. It just has to be linked on a separate line. But at least I can say, well, John has already taken advantage of the self-care for the employee for 80 hours. He doesn't get any more going forward. Are there any questions on any of this stuff so far?
Dayna, we did have a few questions come in. Someone asked, can you explain if any of these three are exempt for employers with less than 50 employees?
There is an exclusion for employees that are less than 50, except that it proves very difficult to prove that because it has to basically state that you would not be able to continue operations by doing this. And because the limit is basically taking care of all of the costs, it'd be difficult to indicate that you fall under that rule. And I think if you reach out, I have some nice guidance written up on that. Dayna, if you get Paula's information, I can get that sent out to her.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Melissa.
We also had a question wondering whether 401 contributions are to be taken out as normal.
Yes, everything stays normal.
We also have a question for wondering whether or not the 941 will require, or what the 941 will require for Q2 in relation to some of the credits, including Medicare and wages.
We don't have a sample of the 941 yet. We're also wondering what it's going to look like and how the credits are going to work on the form. I think the closer we get to the end of the second quarter, I think we would have an answer. We don't have an answer right now. The IRS is obviously still building it, trying to figure it out themselves. So I think when we get to the end of the second quarter, you may have to reach out to your accountant to make sure that everything gets filled out correctly on the form. I think it just makes sense to reach out to anybody at KerberRose. We'll get you in contact. We will, as we get further along, I think we will become more educated in that. Great question.
All right, those are all the questions we had for now, Dayna. So if you wanted to continue.
That's really all I had to show, because I really just wanted to show everybody the setup of the pay items, showing you how it would work, giving you the resources ahead of time to get it set up for yourself, your employee. If your employee does want to take advantage of this, there are forms that can be filled out. You can find those at KerberRose.com or reach out to any of our team members and we'll help get you the forms. You should have good documentation if an employee wants to use this. Just in case anything down the road were to get audited, you would have documentation on why they used it and why you took the credits. I guess that's really all I have. We just wanted to educate everybody and let you know where to call or who to reach out to help yourself set these up. If there's any other questions, I'll take them now.
Sure. Someone is wondering, is there any way to keep track of hours for the Paycheck Protection Program loan?
Well, I think that's just going to go according to the 8 weeks from when you get your loan. So you'll be able to run a payroll summary from that day you get your loan forward till it's ended.
Sure. Sorry, we actually do KerberRose put together pretty much a guideline for best practices for keeping track of paycheck protection loan expenses and all of that. You can find that on our KerberRose.com COVID-19 resources page. So if you do have other questions on the Paycheck Protection Program, that's a good place to look to, as well as getting in contact with some of our other trusted advisors. Let's see, another question we had was, can you show how to track the deferral of employer Social Security deposits?
Meaning you want to show the deferral of the 800 that I used in my example?
Morse, are you able to clarify a little bit on what your question is?
Just by paying this national paid leave, the employer section down here where it says Social Security company, it's 0. The reason it's 0 is because of the credit. So you don't need to take a credit because you're just not going to pay the tax in. Does that help?
Let's see. They want to know if there's a way to track the deferral of Social Security deposits in QuickBooks.
And I think talking about the deferral of payroll tax liability. That's that tax deferral that's separate from this.
So like the $800 on my example here?
No, it's the actual payroll tax liability deferral where you don't have to pay your Social Security taxes until December of 2020 and December of 2021.
Oh, okay. I do not have an answer for that.
My thought would be that it's just not, when you're paying the payroll tax liability, you will not be selecting the taxes for Social Security. And then it just stays out in that pay.
The liabilities. Is that all the questions we have then?
Real quick, one more. We have a question that says, I only have one employee that has concerns. Her check went out yesterday, and it looks like I paid the Medicare and Social Security taxes. Can I fix that? It's only about $100, or do I not bother?
I would fix it. Definitely reach out to one of us. We can help you fix it. It's an easy fix.
Also, does the leave time have to be requested by the employee?
I believe so. Melissa, do you agree?
The leave time, there are some documentations that you should get on a HR perspective from your employee that's basically signing off why you need or why they need the leave time. And if it's like a part-time employee, they should be saying, okay, I need off because of the quarantine. Well, we know that's 14 days, but if I need off for childcare, maybe I don't need off every day. So that document should indicate which days you need off, so you know how to calculate how many hours that employee should be getting. And when making that hours calculation for part-time employees, note that you don't have to pay them the 8 hours if they weren't full-time. So if they were out one whole day, it's not necessarily that you're paying out the 8 hours. Morgan, do you know if we can get everyone's emails and we could just send out that document that we are advising our clients to have complete for their employees complete? Does Eventbrite track all the emails?
Sure. So we will send out, just based off of these questions to, I think we'll be able to send out not only the recording of this presentation, we can also send out how to track those paycheck protection loan expenses. And then we can also send out some of the forms that you can give your employees or that you can just look over yourself to see what needs to happen in order for them to be approved for those Family Medical Leave Act pay. So yes, we can definitely send those out to everyone at the end of this presentation. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we'd like to just say thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you spending your afternoon with us. And like I said, we will be sending out these extra resources for you. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to us on our website or reach out to us with the information that will be provided in this follow-up email. Thank you all.